And welcome back to Executive Table Talk, powered by Work It Daily. My name is JT O'Donnell. I am your host for today, and we are going to be talking to Lynn Holland about the subject of modern influence, how executives can achieve buy-in for their next initiative.
Mhm.
I'm not going to introduce Lynn because she's going to talk a lot about her background and experience, but I just want to tell you, as a sales and business development executive, as a go-to-market strategist, this gal knows her stuff. And I'm so honored to have her on here today. So, with that in mind, let's bring her up to the stage. Hey there, Lynn. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Thanks, JT.
So glad to have you here. Look, so before we begin, I want to talk about this. When you came to me, you said this is a subject near and dear to my heart. And
Mhm.
I sense that this has really come out of your own epiphany over the last several years. Can you talk a little bit about that, where this came from and why it's so important for everyone to learn this today?
It is such a timely topic. This is so important. And I really witnessed this firsthand that, especially in the pandemic, there was like a revolt, if you will, for buyers and um, folks that are wanting to make decisions on different things, and their expectations were really changed. And there was a rule of engagement that is now different for how we want to interact with sellers and people that influence us. And so we sort of absolved ourselves of this in person obligation, and everything shifted to online. And when that happened, we really, as buyers, started demanding anonymity. We wanted to have an independence in the buying journey.
Mm.
And we really stopped responding the way that we used to older school tactics. And so I wanted to talk about today that shift and that new way for executives to be able to stand out and build relationship and trust and influence and gain buy-in, right, from whoever our target audience is, so that we can pivot as executives to increase our success. Now, I'm guessing there's going to be some people listening that are going to say, hey, Lynn, I'm not in sales, so this really doesn't pertain to me. But the reality is that every executive is a influence broker of some sort, and we're selling something, and that could be an idea, it could be support for a project that we're working on or a team that we lead. That might be getting somebody to swipe their credit card to purchase something that we want them to buy from us. It could be we're trying to position ourselves to get picked for a promotion, or that we're trying to be the one that's picked for a job. So let's move on to our next slide, and let's talk about, if we all need as executives to create influence, how do we go about pursuing? What are the things that we've been either using or have been subjected to? So here's some examples. We get disingenuous invites on social media, and it's immediately followed by a pitch or a request for a favor, or it's, hey, I want you to have a meeting with me, and this comes totally out of the blue, right? This stuff's cringy. It could be somebody references a shared alma mater, or hey, we're in this group together, and there's somehow this obligation that now we need to care about what they're going to talk about, or that we feel obligated to need to take that call. It could be canned emails. It could be we do engage with somebody, but then it's a monologue, and it's low value, and it's maybe it's confusing. They're not collected in their thoughts. It could be clickbait. Oh, good job. You got me to open that email up. And then what they've sent us is not relevant.
Mm.
It could be very impersonal. Somebody coming to us and they use our last name, or they spell our name wrong, or it's just flat out irrelevant for our position or our interests, or that person's just ill prepared when they come to us, or the granddaddy. This is when somebody wants our attention. They want us to want what they have to offer, but they're stingy in sharing information with us. So how many times have we wanted to just research something and we had no choice but to give our contact information to somebody, and then sure enough, they spam us, they call us, they email us. Nobody likes this in this dark social era that we're in, because there's a abundance of information out there online, right? And we all have these networks of our peers and people that we respect. Those are the people that we want to go to so that we can independently discover things. We can evaluate potential partners and solutions. And we all want to do that without having a gatekeeper or a salesperson, right? So here's an interesting factoid. And you can, yep. Okay. So according to the Harvard Business Review and the Challenger Sales Organization, they have found that all of us as buyers would get almost 2/3 into a buying cycle of researching ourselves before we would ever engage a buying conversation, if we could do it. So what that tells us is our path to our audience is that we need to generously supply them with information, that we have readily available content to guide them so that they can discover they have a real problem. They can recognize us as a potential partner or solution, and that they're then prepared to address an initiative. But how many sellers or influencers are stuck in 2012? Back in the day when we used to collect emails and phone numbers, and then we would chase people to try to get them to want to buy when they're not ready. 2023, in our prior slide, we see it's different now, right? So now we want to communicate directly to our market, and we want to educate our audience on our offering. And we want to build affinity for our brand. And we want to empower our ideal customer profile, whoever that is, to help them to independently move through a buying process so that they come to us when they're ready to engage. So back to the slide that you were on, JT. Perfect. So now let's talk about how refusing to pivot with our modern audience, how that impacts outcomes. So for sellers and influencers that are still back in 2012, they're going to have longer sales cycles. They're going to have a higher cost of acquisition, and they're going to have lower closing rates because we've not educated them on how we're different, of why what we're wanting to talk to them about is relevant. So when it comes time to decision, they're going to have a 60% chance of sticking with their status quo, that we've not motivated them to act. So I want to translate this now into these business statistics. So there are 30,000 new product launches every single year. And of those, 95% of them fail. And SaaS businesses is a common startup these days. And of service as a solution startups, 92% of them fail within 3 years. So let's say you're an independent contributor as a salesperson. Just over 50%, 54% of sales reps will make their annual quota. Let's say you're a job seeker and you apply, and we're hearing more and more jobs that people are applying for, but let's just say you apply for 21 to 80 jobs. You will have maybe a 30% chance of being the one that gets the job offer. So let's now consider in the next slide, Why are there so many failed endeavors? There are, using our launching and growing a company as our example, there are four main reasons that startup founders fail. Our first one is a lack of funding or an inability to raise funds. So let's call that a lack of influence. The second main reason that they're going to fail is a lack of having a real need with our target audience. Let's call that a lack of relevance. The third major reason is you've gotten flat out competed. Like you're no different than the lookalike. So let's call that a lack of differentiation to other options or to the status quo. And the fourth major reason is you're using a business plan, but your business plan does not scale. So let's call that a lack of distribution, that you're not able to do and disseminate more. Each of these failures is a inability or a failure to reach and or achieve buy-in with our target audience.
I'm going to stop you right there and just interject and say, if you swap this out for a job seeker, and if honestly, as I'm reading through this, and people come to me and say, why are they not getting hired? You literally, those four things, lack of influence, relevance, differentiation, and distribution, are spot on. You are right. It is no different. So anyone listening today, she's right. Lynn, you are so spot on. You have this ability to impact, but you won't impact if you don't have all four, right?
And I think that's the significance of this for every executive, not just people that are in the sales profession, but all of us as executives.
Isn't it cool, though, that what you're showing to me is a way to kind of triage the situation? So if you're not moving the needle, you could sit down and create four quadrants and say, do I have the influence, the relevance, the differentiation, and the distribution, and almost pinpoint which one or more areas is holding you back from success, right?
Absolutely.
Love it.
Absolutely. So let's now move on and let's talk about modern buyer behaviors. So the failures that we just talked about, those teach us that all of us need to reach our modern audience, whoever they are, how they want to be reached and how they're going to respond. It's going to be a clear, relevant, differentiated message. And we're going to publish that where they natively go, right? Where they're going to already be, to educate them, to build relationship and trust, and to establish us as the go-to when they're ready to engage. And without that, we are going to have lower results. So let's go back to our Challenger B2B buyer study. And I want to talk about 3 data points. So the first one is, what are the top motives for our audience to engage with us? First one is, we're going to help them to recognize a need. There's an actual problem. Second of all, we're going to give them ample, engaging content so that they can anonymously research. And the third major one is that we're personalizing for our audience. So our next data point, if you want to move on.
I went too fast there. I was too excited. Happy click.
So here, what we're researching is, where is our potential audience going to go to find us, to find out about us, to find out about us as a potential solution or vendor, so we can meet them there. So we've got the first 3. The first one's a website. I look at a website like a repository of information. That's where we can put, and this could be a business that has an actual website, or if it's an executive, maybe you have a landing page, or maybe you use your LinkedIn account as that repository. But it's the place where we put content where our audience can go binge on us, right? So it's a website, it's social media pages, it's content that we're publishing online. These are all things that are edutaining our audience and doing it online. The second three are reviews, their studies, their testimonials. So this is about gaining credibility with our audience. And again, this is happening online predominantly. The least place where our audience is going to go to find us and research us is going to be like a live event, an at person, a conference or a trade show, or maybe a webinar. But all of this is telling us how important our online presence is, that it's absolutely crucial to being visible, to giving out engaging content that's going to educate our audience. And that's where we're going to gain credibility and build relationships. So our third data point, if you want to move on, is now let's talk about what does it look like when we enter the conversation with our audience after we've already educated them and they're ready to buy. So I want to share personally in the circles of executives that I travel in, all of us would attribute content to getting promotions in our jobs, to being contacted by potential clients, to being recruited by Fortune 100 companies, getting speaking invitations, or being invited to be on a panel or a contributing author to some major outlets. But let's also look at a major enterprise marketing agency's study and result of service as a solution buyers, that the sales process was dramatically decreased when those SaaS companies had created demand. They put content out to do that educating process. The results were for a $40,000 sale. It went from 180 days to 70 days for somebody to buy. For a $33,000 sale, it went from 210 days to 76 days. And for an $18,000 sale, it went from 42 days down to 22 days.
Wow.
So it was a significant impact, all by us laying a foundation with our audience.
That's amazing. Those are crazy stats. It just for somebody, if that's just sinking in for people, that proactively putting out the information shorten the sales cycle. Mm-hmm. So anytime you want to influence faster, the more that's out there for them to consume what they need to consume to make that decision faster, that's the solution, right? I mean, that's incredible. Incredible.
And like you said, having those quadrants of proactively, have I built my reputation? Have I addressed, concerns that they're going to have? Again, understanding our audience and giving them what they're going to care about.
Amazing.
So let's move on and talk about, let's get practical, right? So for every executive, what are the steps that we can take to reach our target audience, to stand out, to create influence, and to get buy-in? Whether that's the idea that we're trying to sell, or it's that support for a project, or support with a team that we're leading, convincing a buyer to swipe their credit card, or getting picked for the promotion or the job offer. From our studies that we talked about, we established that reaching our audience online is an absolute must. And that's whether it's in our industry, within our own organization, and or maybe we're launching into a new territory or a new venture. So here are 4 things that I think need to inform as we pursue our audience. The first one is thinking about how we buy. So we are, as buyers, moved when we're given value or surprising insights that we can evaluate, we can investigate, and that we want to do that independently, to educate on the problem, to build affinity, and to recognize that source as a viable partner or solution, and then to make it easy when we're ready to buy. So, in a book called Sell You the Way You Buy, a man named David Premier gives sort of a golden rule of sales and marketing. He says, put yourself in your buyer's shoes and ask yourself if the tactics you're using to reach or sell your audience would not work to sell you on you, or to sell you on what you're trying to sell. Don't use them on them either. The second thing that we need to think about is, what do we as buyers respond to? So everyone is going to think, why should I listen to you? We're busy, right? Today, people want a guide. They don't want a guru. So when we approach our audience and we reach back and say, here's how I've done this and how you can do this too, we're going to get a better reception and response rather than saying, here's how you should. So think about how many 20-year-old relationship experts on YouTube that are talking about how to have a good marriage are we going to listen to? We're not. So we're taking what we've done and we're translating that into value for our target audience. The third thing that I think we need to all think about is, what are we motivated by? So people are always going to ask or think in their head, what's in it for me? We're selfish people, right? So it pays dividends for us to know who is our ideal customer profile, our target audience, and what is going to intrinsically, internally motivate them to take action in whatever it is that we want them to interact with. So that could be the buying the idea, supporting our project, swiping their card, looking to us for the promotion, or giving us that job offer. Mm-hmm. So I want to use a particular persona as an example. Let's say that we're using a chief financial officer that we're trying to reach. Mm-hmm. That CFO is going to be externally motivated by an EBITDA goal. So that's the standard that his annual goal, his or her annual goal, that I need to make this metric for the board of directors. The internal motivation for him, and this is a whole process that kind of translating down from external down to internally, and at its base, that CFO is going to be thinking, if I don't get this EBITDA goal, I'm not going to make my annual bonus. And if I don't make my annual bonus, I'm not going to get to buy the car I want. And they're going to be embarrassed because the people in their organization or their board of directors may think, they're incompetent. So as we engage that CFO with, hey, here's how I've solved meeting my EBITDA goal and how you can too, now all of a sudden we're relevant and they're going to care to hear what we have to say, right? The last thing is thinking about how we are reached. So I want to give us some more stats. 84% of consumers expect brands, whether you're a commercial brand or a personal brand, 84% of consumers expect brands to create content. Another statistic, adding videos to an email increases click rates or engagement by 300%. Next one, our audience needs to see us and our message 7 to 8 times to even just recognize us and what we do, let alone to buy from us. So making ourselves visible is so essential for us to succeed with our target audience. So I did give everybody some homework. So that's our next slide. So here's what I want to challenge everybody in is us taking ownership of our personal brand, whatever our title is, whatever our role is as executives, building our network and engaging our audience with engaging, edutaining content, especially doing that on camera. So whether you do it on your own or you do it getting help, I recommend that everybody start defining their brand and think in terms, JT, you talk about this all the time, about being a business of one, right? So we start thinking about what is that value that I can offer out to my audience. And we perpetually need to have a consistent content strategy that is giving us a digital reputation, that we're being really engaging with video and we're going where our audience is natively hanging out. And as we do that, we're generously giving value. We're approaching our audience as this approachable guide. We're tapping into what intrinsically motivates them to act or to spend money. And we build a brand and content engine. Going back to our subject, this is how we're going to achieve modern influence.
I love it. I absolutely love it. This is so cool, Lynn. So first of all, folks, I want to give Lynn a breather because she's been giving us so much great information. Lynn is a go-to-market and revenue generation consultant. We've got all of her contact information up here. Honestly, just look her up right now on LinkedIn, Lynn Holland, find her, follow her. She's, of course, practicing what she preaches, putting out some great information and content on LinkedIn so you can learn from her. But also I would encourage you to send a custom connection request and tell her that you saw her here on her executive table talk because it was fantastic. Lynn, I want to get to some questions. So let's bring these up here. First one I want to hit on is from Michael Willis. Shout out to Michael. He asked, how can executives tailor their communication to effectively convey the benefits and value of their initiatives to different stakeholders?
I think that's really, thanks for that question, Michael. I think that's really important. And we talked a little bit about personalizing for our audience. So I have a 3-stage discovery that I like to go through based on who I'm talking to. So let's use that CFO is our example still. So the persona for a CFO is that they're going to be concerned with what's going to directly impact financial performance, right? So they're not thinking about operations. They're not thinking about systems. They're not thinking about admin. They're thinking about the performance of the meeting of their EBITDA goal. So thinking about that particular person and their role, the objectives they have, their fears, and their objections. Secondly, we need to think about those motives. So we're all externally motivated, right? So that CFO, if we want them to buy our software, we're going to use a sales example here. We want them to buy our software, and we're pitching that this is going to cut your operating costs. We need to think about the external business problem that CFO is going to have, which is I've got poor efficiency, I've got excess logistics costs, we're overshooting our budget, and there's going to be an inciting incident that's going to make it a reason for that CFO to think about needing to do something. For him or her, that EBITDA goal is going to be their inciting incident. I've got to cut my costs by 15% or I'm not going to meet my annual bonus. So now there's a business loss. So he's thinking, I'm having poor efficiencies. I'm overshooting my budget. I've got this EBITDA goal. I got to cut costs by 15%. And now he's going to think in terms of what is that business loss, which is I'm losing $20,000 a month to demerge fees or transportation costs, or my days outstanding are too long. Now he's going to move internally, and they're going to think, The internal program is, or problem is, I got to find a solution that my staff can implement and do it successfully to meet the goal to get my bonus. Mm-hmm. And when we go through all the layers, now it comes down to what hurts and what's personal pain for them, which is that I'm risking my bonus to buy my car and I'll be perceived as not competent. So I think when we kind of work it down from persona, what they're going to care about in their role, but now we sort of think through the external and the internal motivations. And then finally, we talked about being proactive. So with that executive, we can now think proactively how our offering, things they're going to care about, like this is what I'm talking to you about, mission critical. This is within what their personal pain is, that we're not being redundant. You don't have anything already that answers this. We're going to think about, he's going to care that there's an internal champion who's going to be accountable for this. Fourthly, that they're going to want to give, they're going to want us to show them that they've got personally an opportunity to prove out what we're asking of them. And lastly, that there's a low commitment and we're guaranteeing. So I just think it's really starting with that persona and really cueing in on that person's personal pain, what is pertaining to their goal, what are they even going to care about, and being proactive about addressing the things, thinking like they think.
Amazing. Lynn, we've got time for one more question. And I think the one that I want to discuss is social media tools. So when you think about the platforms that are ideal for this, what should people be evaluating and prioritizing? Because it's possible to do all of them. So what's your take on that?
Well, I think that social media platforms are really important. That's going to depend on our audience, whether they're a consumer, they're consumer-based, they're looking for something personally, or they're corporately based. Some of that's going to be determined there, but I like tools like SparkTuro. I'm not endorsed by them, but I like that tool because what that allows us to do is go get insights about the particular audience that we want to reach. So we can drill down and plug in, this is the audience I'm trying to get, and we can get demographic data like their title and their gender and their education and their political bent. We can look at behaviors of what things does this person or this group talk about? What do they read? What do they watch? What do they listen to? What do they follow? What do they say about themselves? Like, what are they posting out on their social media, their hashtags, the language in their posts? It used to be that we would spend hours trying to track down people that we're trying to get a job with, that we're going to be interviewing with, or a potential ideal customer profile. And now there's tools where it does the work for us. So we can create some filters and it will then triangulate our audience so that we can know where to go reach them and the topics that we can be talking about that are going to resonate with them.
Love it. I absolutely love it. That's such great advice, because if you know the persona, then you maybe, who knows what platform they're going to be on and where you can go grab them. So fascinating. This has been phenomenal, Lynn. I absolutely love it. Just want to remind everyone, we've been talking today to Lynn Holland. She's a go-to-market and revenue generation consultant, strategist. You can find her here on LinkedIn. She's also obviously a Work It Daily executive expert. So if you want to go read some incredible articles by Lynn, head on over there as well. And she's even put her email address up here. But I really encourage you to follow her on LinkedIn, as well as reach out and ask her to connect on LinkedIn. And with that in mind, I want to say, Lynn, thank you so much. This was super enlightening. It went very fast, and I hope you'll come back again for another ETT.
Thanks, JT.
Thanks everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.